Good evening and welcome back to Checkpoint. My name is Sophia Wanuna. Tonight, we are honored to have the Treasury CS, Henry Rotich, with us. Thank you for making the time, sir. I know it's a busy time working on budget. So thank you for making time for Checkpoint. Yeah. Right now, NYS, a big story because of this new scandal. Several people have been charged. But let's go back to when NYS's budget was increased, as I said, we're going to break from 5 billion to 25 billion. What informed that kind of an increase? And now in hindsight, do you think it was a mistake?
Not really. As you know, under the President's initiative in 2013, we wanted to engage the youth and create the jobs and deal with some of the challenges that we had by using the National Youth Service to do most of the public programs. You're aware of many programs that NYS did in 2013, and there are quite a number of other good things that has been done. So that informed the big shift from the budget.
That's huge. Had capacity been assessed? Had the systems and the structures for absorption been assessed? Because what we are seeing now is pilferage, left, right, and center. Was that considered?
Well, yes. Obviously, we had already instituted a lot of reforms in the public financial management, the legal framework, and also the integrated financial management system, which would help to deal with such challenges. So yes, there was capacity, but anyway, the challenge also is in an institution which is big like that, dealing with many small programs like being countrywide and doing all these programs usually poses a challenge in terms of procuring things that they need for their use. Yeah. So obviously, that was going to be a challenge. But overall, I would say...
But the challenge here is looting. It's not the work, it's the stealing. So would you then, in your budget, as you come to read it, to justify this kind of amounts of money going to an institution and the money not going to its rightful use?
As I said, a lot of good things have happened. I can explain to you really how the procurement items and how it links to the IFMIS. The issue really is a question of how items that are procured are well kept, stored in NYS, which sometimes has posed a challenge in the way the stores who actually receive these goods have been dealing with them. The big issue has been whether those have been actually creating some I would say delivery notes which are not right. But those are things that are outside. No. Those are outside IFMIS.
So government transacts outside of IFMIS as well?
Yeah, there are issues to do with receipts of goods cannot be undertaken, but are verified by storekeepers, for example. So that typically cannot be integrated in the IFMIS system. IFMIS is a financial management system. But what we are trying to do now is to come up with sort of an end-to-end procurement system that is able to capture, issues of how you capture the stores and how they are linked when payments have been made, so that you don't have sometimes like what has happened in NYS, where you have manual LPOs that were attached in the payment.
Yeah, but so we had that, I think it was in 2016, when there was an increase in the IFMIS to improve the system, that end-to-end procurement to pay to improve. So did it happen at the time?
Well, the IFMIS has an e-procurement system, but it is not as robust as what a typical procurement system that has about like 26 stages that we have in our system. So for everything to be undertaken, procurement right from tender until delivery of goods, that is not fully supported in the IFMIS system.
So there are gaps.
So what we are going to do is to have a dedicated e-procurement system itself that will interface with IFMIS so that it can capture some of the issues to do with what I've just said, like, delivery notes and the like.
So then would you concede the system you're seeking to improve, the gaps that exist now, are what is allowing for these looters to thrive?
The IFMIS system was not, designed to capture up to that level. Yeah, you must have its own suite of e-procurement that is dedicated to procurement. As I said, IFMIS is just an integrated financial management system.
So we're looking to get another system?
No, not another system.
To improve IFMIS?
A dedicated suite that will link interface with IFMIS.
With IFMIS.
That now will undertake the entire chain, supply chain of procurement. The chain system that is in e-procurement, the system is not adequate, especially to deal with the delivery or procurement of small items like what NYS does, So that is really what we need to focus on, so that we can cover all this and make sure that all of them are actually captured in the system.
We'll go back to IFMIS in a short while, but let's take it back to NYS, because during the last scandal, NYS1, the CBK governor is on record as saying that one of the banks had flagged off some 84 million transaction and wrote to Treasury and followed up with several calls. In fact, he says he wrote to Treasury Director General Accounting, and that red flag was ignored. Numerous calls went unanswered, so that this could have been acted on at the time, but it wasn't. What do you say to that?
Well, the people who generate payment is really at the accounting officer level.
Right.
So it's not really at Director General Accountant at the Treasury. But if there is an issue with, say, a vote of, say, devolution and planning, where NYS was domiciled, that accounting officer is supposed to confirm all those payments, because they are the ones who generate the payment.
Because this was an issue of the transaction in the banks, because they're meant to report suspicious activities of what would be dirty money, but that it wasn't acted upon.
Well, you see, the identification of suspicious transactions are identified in the banks, you know, and reconfirmed whether these are genuine payment. And it is really, at the bank level, it is an issue of knowing your customer, so that if sort of there is a customer who has just received huge amounts, which has not before transacted such huge amount, that is what now how your suspicious payment come in.
Yes.
Yeah. But if somebody can justify his payment that he was expected to receive money because of the supplies as made and all that, that would definitely be reflected in the banks. But it's up to the banks to really
for Treasury to take action on this individual that was transacting. But also with that, in the last NYS, we saw 3 banks being found to have been involved in these transactions with dirty money, and they were given a fine of 3 million shillings, so 1 million shillings each. In 2015, the president talked about very tough penalties, in fact, even stripping banks involved in this kind of transactions of their licenses. So why so lenient? A bank, 1 million, is that deterrent, really?
Well, you may have recalled that in the finance bill, I think 2016, I did raise that penalty from 1 million to 20 million. Part of it was really to be a deterrent measure. But the critical thing here is what the banks really is supposed to do is just know your customer. Because if your customer has been transacting that amount of money, then it doesn't cause an alarm. It causes alarm
when
only
the alarm
if
is raised, the Treasury Director General Accounting Officer is not doing anything, is what the CBK governor put him on the spot for.
It is not the alarm that you see, once you raise the alarm, now investigation takes place now. There is in Treasury the Financial Reporting Center. So this is where suspicious transactions arise. And what they do is to send this to the regulators and ESCC also.
Okay.
And to do the now investigation and find out where these funds came from
and where they're going.
Whether they have. So those are the investigations that are ongoing, and will now identify whether there was a problem with these funds.
So this time around, if banks are found culpable, 20 million shillings at least, or stripping of their practice licenses.
The issue of stripping, you know, it's a big challenge to say that you're stripping a
The president
license.
said that's what his government is keen to do.
You see, the thing is, best practice globally is that banks usually are penalized monetary-wise.
Okay.
And that is why you need to have a sufficient deterrent penalty.
Right.
Because you see, as you know, a bank is there because of a trust and all that. You can't just close a bank like that. Mm-hmm. It has repercussions, you know. Just bank and you can't just close it like that easily.
Tougher penalties.
Tougher penalties is what has happened. You have seen HSBCs globally. Standard Bank has also been slapped in by Fed in the US.
We're hoping to see that here in Kenya as well.
But not closing them.
Okay, let's go back to IFMIS, and we'll put up some of those findings. But the Auditor General report that I mentioned, it came out in 2016, and Cabinet Secretary, it is appalling the kind of weaknesses it found existed in a system that is used to manage public funds. So that, for instance, that there were unidentified users that could log in remotely into IFMIS, and we'll put up that on your screen for you to just see with me. Users with multiple identities, up to even 50. 50 users would have more than one user ID, possible to create ghost IDs, people with remote access capability unknown, that someone could be in Kariomaido or somewhere, get into IFMIS, we don't know who they are, we don't know what they are doing, and money gets out. Talk to me about how we got a system that 2016 the Auditor General gave these findings.
There's no system as such that you have described, for sure. IFMIS is used globally. It's an Oracle-based. In fact, when there was such kind of allegations, even Oracle themselves was wondering, they were curious to know whether that things really happened. Systems, obviously, yes, over time, you need to make sure that there is enough quality assurance as much as possible. Mm-hmm. But there's no system you can produce, especially like what managing financial resources like that, and you're just saying somebody can be in somewhere in River Road, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah. But money is being looted through this system, so couldn't it be possible, sir?
That's exactly what I wanted to do. I think you need really, and we would be happy to take many Kenyans through how the system works. I think one of the biggest problems we have here is a big misconception of how IFMIS works. You know, the system is as good as how the users are. We have very clear chain of approval levels, you know. So once you enter in, and there is another level of approval, third level, fourth, and all those levels of approval, that transaction, the system will deem to be right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only way money can get lost in the system is if the 5 level or individuals collude and agree that this transaction will be passed.
And does the system then show where the ball has been dropped in that case?
Yes, the system, and that is why actually if you find out all these investigations have been assisted very well because of the audit trail you can get with it. You know, before we used to have manual systems, you know. If you were to do all this investigation, I'm very sure by now you'll be hearing a file has gotten lost.
So I
don't know. But what is happening
these findings are not true according to
very clear that if you approve audit trail, it just shows it was Sophie who did. It was me who did.
Your
so
PS,
very clear there.
Yeah, your PS has written to all accounting officers talking about a review and improvement of IFMIS. One of the things it says to deactivate users so that to sieve out. So it means as we speak, because this is up to July, there are people who should not be in the system transacting in IFMIS that are doing
Let me correct that. You see, that, as I said, we are constantly improving the system. Having said what I said, that the system is tamper-proof and all that. But systems are like that. You must constantly review and make sure that there is not prone to any abuse and all that. This is what we've done. We've done, I also the report from the Auditor General, plus also what we've done ourselves, quality check of this. Together of those, we are implementing these recommendations. Some of the recommendations are consolidating license, some of the things like, increasing the approval levels, which we have done and all that.
So how do you explain to Kenyans that this looting is still happening? So you're saying it's just some unscrupulous people. IFMIS, as far as you're concerned,
let me explain.
Is watertight.
It cannot happen in the system itself.
There are no gaps in the system.
What happened? You need to understand the case of NYS.
Yeah.
The case of NYS is an issue of where the people who are receiving goods in the departmental stores certify that goods have been received and then initiate the process of payment through the IFMIS, So, and that is why I said earlier on that we need now to get an end-to-end, a system that can capture, and so that when you are actually receiving goods and verifying that goods have been received, it can actually enter into the system.
Yeah, in essence, you're seeking to
Currently,
improve.
we have an LLPO-generated IFMIS system. For the case of NYS, it was a manual system. So these are some of the things that should have happened in this. But it's not to do with the system itself. So it is some level that needs to be brought on board.
Yes, so there's still a gap to be able to make it a full circle kind of
exactly.
a system.
And what can be done is getting a whole suite of e-procurement that can manage. In the procurement law, we have about 27 steps. So to get all those steps together, then now integrated in the system.
Unfortunately, our time is up, but I must ask you this because when most of our viewers heard you were coming, a question that kept coming up is how is it that to date the Auditor General cannot trace 250 billion shillings from the Eurobond that Kenya was able to get? So what do you say to those Kenyans who sit back and say the Auditor General has gone through the books, the paperwork, he can't find this money? Where did it go? Briefly.
That's not right in the first place. The Auditor General information, he has all the information. I think in this last report, he didn't say the money is lost.
I had him here last weekend, and he still cannot account for that money.
No, he has all the information. It is up to him to prepare the reports. The information that he was seeking from the Fed, he has received it. He has been assisted to get it. Before he was saying he could not get it. So
we wait for a report of whether maybe...
We are waiting, and we have asked him to expedite the report as quickly as possible. But information, we have even ourselves...
so what in specific did the money go to?
Quite a number of development projects, and I think we did indicate this...
like which significant one? I mean, 250 billion, that's huge.
When we talk of development projects, they are huge that the government undertook, right from transport sector, road sector, water sector, energy sector. I guess you are seeing a lot of projects happening on the ground.
Yeah, but wasn't that
how would you as that some of them have been funded through the Eurobond proceeds.
Because what the Auditor General report appeared to have been painting a picture of is that all of these development projects you mentioned, sir, were coming from the money being collected internally. That this special 250 billion coming in, the injection of that could not be traced. It all appeared to be all from what we already had.
That's not true.
That's
not true. You know,
yeah.
The money is very clearly can be traced in the consolidated fund.
Okay.
How would you explain the increase in central bank reserves from $6 billion to currently $8 billion?
Okay.
I mean, it's just common sense. That where did the central bank get foreign exchange? They took the foreign exchange and gave us the Kenya shilling in the consolidated fund.
Okay.
And that is very clear. It is in the books. And it is just a question of Kenyans spending a lot of time, a little bit to understand how consolidated fund works. Yeah, and we can be able to provide that information. We have provided.
Okay.
The Auditor General have been empowered to get all this information.
Right.
So it's just for him to conclude his findings.
Thank you.
Thank you very
so
much.
much for your time. Henry Rotich, Cabinet Secretary Treasury, with us tonight on that discussion. Stay with us here on Checkpoint, KTN News. We're taking a short break, but when we come back, we're discussing prosecution of graft. What is Kenya getting